And then as far as sort of the cinematic compass points coming in, where, you know, maybe you've seen Julie, but there's moments in the film where the textures remind me somewhat of Dr. Zhivago, and just sort of the presentation and things. When you obviously you have the play, you're coming from the stage, but what were some of the cinematic influences or decisions you made?
It was many things. David Lean as a director was very much in our minds. I loved going to the movies and seeing a picture like Lawrence of Arabia. I saw a poster for a version of it outside, where you start with the overture. You're just looking, you know, you're looking at a picture of some curtains, and it says overture, where there's intermission music, there's entr'acte music, and there's an unashamed meeting of cinema and theatre in some kind of way, but also, yeah, the texture of Zhivago, etc. And then for me, the world of, there was a very, I think, very underrated film called Meyerling. Don't know if people here are familiar with it. It's about the story of a rather tragic moment in the lives of the Habsburg royal family at the end of the 19th century in Austria. And the world of that, this rich world where, you know, the great and the good wore wonderful costumes, looked good, and you know, were a combination of wonderfully glamorous and also wonderfully sinister, was something from that period that we wanted to get, and where, you know, every building, every costume, every room is trying to say we're in charge, which we could then sort of, you know, sort of underline and then undermine a little with that sort of eternal issue Shakespeare seems to have between all of that grandeur, big castles, palaces, people who run things. The fate of nations changes as a result of these people's activities. I enjoyed being reminded of a shot tonight there where, when they're really in trouble, and he says, "My soul is full of discord and dismay," Derek Jacobi to Julie Christie, and we pull away, and it's two people, it's a mum and a dad in the middle of the night when the most appalling thing has happened. Their son has killed someone, but unfortunately it also is the Prime Minister. So not only is there the tragedy for the Polonius family, there's the crisis in the nation. But they're still just two people in a corridor, and now instead of it being grand and a corridor they own and walk through, the corridor is much bigger than them, and we get away and start to see, well, but you're just two human beings. How do you cope with that? And I think that was something we tried to sort of mark in the way we shot things. That difference in scale and size, public, personal.
Absolutely, and speaking of size, I mean, this is not a short film. It's filmed in 70mm, the last major film drama to be filmed in 70mm. Were those challenges for you, or did everybody in the world step up and say, yes, let's make this happen?
No, they're always, I mean, it's a miracle to get it done, and there were a lot of brilliant people involved. Castle Rock and Martin Schaefer and Alan Horn were all magnificent in the way they just went with it. But I mean, yeah, well, I had to persuade them, and I had to, you know, get in there and say that you know, the feeling of doing the entire thing, whatever we might call the full text of Hamlet, for everything about hearing the play, for everything about the detail that these actors we've been talking about could bring to that, was you know, was something that they eventually thought was a good thing, and 70mm with the kind of crispness and detail and sharpness and clarity that I was so moved to see in the interiors and in the reds and in the sort of sense of the opulence of the court. It felt as though that format started to tell a big part of the Hamlet story that was also part of how we were inflecting it, which was to get away from being dark castles and gothic, and to say, actually, you know, at the beginning of this play, Claudius looks like he might be doing a good job. In the old days, old Hamlet dealt with things in face-to-face combat, single combat. Claudius seems to have a rather smoother way of running things. Who's to say that this isn't a good moment in the life of Denmark? And who's to say that Hamlet isn't any more than just a kind of spoiled boy not dealing well with grief? And so I think that all of those things, plus the combination of frankly, the sort of star power of all those actors, when you've got people like Jack Lemmon in smaller parts, there was a sort of an event about that, Gérard Depardieu in a small part, and then a number of people from all over the world as well, great Russian actor in there, with people like Jack, they just brought, you know, something literally magical. Before every take, and under his breath, they'd say turn over, and he would say under his breath, magic time, every single take. It was his presence, Depardieu, you know, Billy Crystal, I think does a terrific job as the gravedigger, and there was a great sense of event. We were very blessed to have Charlton Heston, who I think is tremendous in the film, and a sort of again was a wonderful presence. So there was a sense of event. Again tonight, just the sense in terms of the why of it all. How did you get the money? How did people step up? It was partly because, at least for me, in awe of this great play, to see with very fine people, for instance, the play scene, the scene that is the mirror that promotes, in theory, is Hamlet's plot to prove Claudius's guilt, I think it was very, very well done by Charlton and by Rosie Harris. That felt as though tonight, because this is what happens for me anyway when I come back to this work, you get more out of it, and it's rich. It's like a piece of music. It's a piece of poetry. So if you go back to it, and if you feel it, I think you feel something different. Even with a set thing, the movie hasn't changed, but those lines they connect with the human spirit in a different way. Including, I was reminded tonight about some of the secret characters in Shakespeare. This is when we weren't being as serious as I just sounded then, and we were having a bit of a lark. You looked for secret names in Shakespeare, and Jack Lemmon had one. He talks about proceeding with Marshal Stork. So we had this idea of Marshal Stork, who was a Russian general, not, you know, somewhere in the back of the play. Charlton Heston talks about, at one point he says, grief, joy, joy grieves. So Joy Greaves became a character who was backstage with us. And then we decided also that Gertrude had a little lapdog, and the lapdog was called Amazement. Because at one stage, the ghost says to Hamlet, "But look, amazement on thy mother sits." See, that's what happens when you have the time off. There's too much coffee. Then there's all sorts of other people, like Elsie Knorr, obviously, she's a character in there as well. So there are plenty of those.
And what about, when you were putting together your Hamlet, obviously you played Hamlet on stage, did you decide to go in a different direction on any particular part because of the medium?
I tried to follow my instincts based on having played it a couple hundred times probably prior to that, and for him, I feel, for instance, at least I felt that it was not the case that Hamlet was ever mad. I think the clear distinction here is that Ophelia genuinely does become incoherent and distracted, that Hamlet, although under tremendous stress, still has this sort of biting wit available to him. I used as an acting coach a brilliant man called Hugh Crutwell, who was the principal of the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art when I studied there, and he retired in about 1985, but he was always, so he'd seen me from the first moment I came into audition. I was 17 years old, and I auditioned, and then he rang up a few days later, which to me was a miracle. I wasn't expecting this. He was very, very English. He had a very, very particular way of talking. Very, very precise, very erudite, very eloquent. He said, so you came here the other day. Everybody here wants to offer you a place. You made quite the impression. I wasn't at all moved by what you did. I think that sort of acting is 10 a penny. It's a sort of glorified showing off. It won't be good enough. So he said, you've got to come back in. And so he came back in, and he really, it was the beginning of, he would be on my case the entire time. From a position, I would say, of love. I absolutely adored him. He was a brilliant man because he knew what to say to actors to release their imaginations. And so, for instance, a memorable day with this beautiful man who was both passionately enthusiastic, and he was there watching my performance through all the Shakespeare films, through Henry V, through Much Ado About Nothing, all the way up to Dead Again. He was here for Dead Again. Very funny on the first day here in Los Angeles. So this is the craft service, is it? Now, you, Chuck, perhaps you can take me through some of these, what is it, pastrami, is that what it is? But back in Shepperton, '96, I'll give you an example, a beautiful example of why I loved him. So we're doing the to be or not to be soliloquy, already complicated because although it's a slow move into this mirror, in that room, all of those mirrors were on sort of gimbals so they could all move around. It wasn't in the real Blenheim Palace where we shot the exteriors, but it was a soundstage in Shepperton. They were all movable, but it was very difficult to not reflect the crew in some way in the mirror. It seems like it ought to be simple enough, but so it was a long time getting together. I was very nervous. I felt this is like the acting Olympics. Got the probably most famous speech in sort of Western dramatic literature. When you play it in the theatre and you come on with that book in your hand, usually, you can hear the entire audience go, even if they've never been to a Shakespeare play before, the entire audience are there mouthing it with you, audibly going, "To be." Like he's doing it now. That's what we came for. We came for the thing. And also they do it when they do, you know, the skull comes up.
It's like a Journey concert.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't hold back.
And so we're preparing for this. We finally got the, and already I've had to deal with the dolly grip, who's moving. Brilliant guy called David Appleby. And his job is to move at exactly the right kind of time and not be seen. And he's sort of squatting as he's doing that. He's already been giving me notes. Because he's saying, well, you want to, when you've got the undiscovered country there, Ken, you want to slow down a bit, mate, because I was seeing them up the top left mirror there, so I think you want to take a pace down. I said, hold on. But eventually we get to it, so I've got my notes from the dolly grip. And then thank you, David. Push the machine. And then something right. Okay. To be or not to be. That's it. Right, so now we start number one. Go over to Hugh's. By the way, Hugh, what did you think? You should do another one. Yes, of course, I'm going to do another one. But any notes? No, I haven't any notes at the moment. Okay. So do a second one, and then a third one. Each time it takes a while, and you're trying to try various things. And we get to about 4. I'm saying, no, Hugh, it's starting to feel as though we're getting there. Obviously, we can't be here all day, and so if you don't want to say anything, no, I'll hold my counsel, if I will. I should do another one if I were you. So now we're getting to 5 or 6. Now my experience with these things is around 7. I think the lucky take numbers, or at least the ones where sort of rhythm goes off, 3, 7, and 11. If you've gone past 7, you probably ought to go to 11. Yeah, exactly. It is like Vegas. So anyway, I get to number 6. So I'm going to do the 7th. Hugh, if this is good, if I think it's going to go by, I'm going to move on. He said, oh, okay, we'll do it again. I haven't going to say it yet. And so I do one more, I come back, and he said, I think it's good. He said, no. May I speak now? I said, yes, you would. He said, well, it's absolutely extraordinary. You have this amazing grasp of the language, the rhythm of it, the density of it. I feel as though I can understand everything. The colours are absolutely in place. I said, Hugh, what's the problem? He said, I simply don't believe a word you say. You've got absolutely no sense of the man at all. This inner struggle with the possibility of death, the sense of looking into the abyss, the great darkness, the moral void that is the potential alternate to this act of revenge. That's all. You don't mind me saying this, do you? It's what you pay me for. I'll do another one. I'll do another. Hugh, I'm doing another one. We went to 11.